Another way that you can use assets, if you're a developer, you could use assets within your IDE. Rational Asset Manager supports integrations and provides a native Eclipse-based rich client. This rich client can easily be plugged into any application that's been built with Eclipse. So for example, if you're using Rational Software Architect, Rational Application Developer, Rational Team Concert, these are all technologies that are built and products that are built with Eclipse. I can include RAM and its asset management perspective inside of Eclipse. So I've done that here. I click on the asset management perspective, switching from my Java perspective. I'm able to connect to a RAM repository using web services as Gilly, and I'm able to quickly see what assets I've downloaded, my recent submissions as well. I'm able to search. So by clicking on the search, perhaps I want to go and find that asset, which is the Ajax component that we just created. Sure enough, there's the Ajax table component. I can click on that. This will load it in, and it'll give me all the information I need about that asset. The attributes, the owner, the information in the description about how this is an Ajax component that allows me to be used with J2E applications. I'm able to look at the contents of the assets. I'm able to look at the categories. What are the related assets? I can see this is being used by the service implementation. What ratings have been done and feedback that have been given by others. If there's discussions going on. As well as the statistical information about how this asset is being used. If I wanted to, I could import the entire asset into RAM and even the related assets. But most likely what I want to do is, rather than import all the assets, I likely just really want to reference the jar files that will allow me to use this in my local environment. I can click on this artifact, the jar file, the JSF jar file, pick the project that I want to associate it with in the library, and then I can put that right into the folder, and I can click Finish. What this will do then is it will create a dependency relationship with my workspace so that I'm able to effectively build in my local workspace by referencing this remote jar. This allows teams to only have access to approved jar files as part of their development process that have been reviewed by the legal team, by our architecture team, ensuring that they're in compliance and not breaking any rules. And rather than copying jar files from the web or other locations that have not been properly verified to be in compliance with your organization. By doing this, if we look at our Java perspective, I can see other assets that have been pulled in jar files that have been pulled out of Rational Asset Manager. For example, other jar files or WSDL files. By clicking on these and looking at their properties file, I can see, in clicking on the reusable asset setting, I have a link that automatically will take me to the asset in the web client. This allows me to better understand what components I am referencing out of the definitive software library, which is Rational Asset Manager. You can also create assets right within your development environment. So here I am in my J2E perspective. I'm going to go ahead and create an asset out of this service specification. The service specification has gone through enough iteration now that I'd like my other team members and other stakeholders throughout the organization to begin to provide comments. I click on that service specification, say I want to create an asset, pick the asset management perspective, hit Finish, and then I just fill in the details about this asset, just like I would do in the web client. Give it a version. While this may be the 15th version inside of my IDE and inside of my SCM system, this is actually the 3rd version of this service across the organization. Specify the community that this will go to and provide what type of asset it is. In this case, it's a specification. If I look at the contents, I can browse, add other files, for example. I could add folders. I could also add URLs to other assets that maybe aren't in my IDE are our remote, for example, license files, help documents that also need to go along with the service. Once I've done that, I can relate other assets. And RAM actually even suggests other assets perhaps that are related to this asset to help you facilitate submitting the asset. Go ahead and submit it. You notice here that once the asset gets submitted, it automatically gets introspected to see what are the attributes like service operations, target namespace, and other information about that service. RAM has the ability to automate this as part of the asset submission process. As software developers deliver, for example, specifications, WSDL files, or other assets and artifacts out of their SCM system, like Rational Team Concert, Clearcase, and Subversion, RAM will automatically assign the asset attributes, but also continue to trace where those artifacts came from. For example, in this case, I can see that this artifact came from an IDE SCM integration, what the baseline name is, what the stream name is, what the component name is, what the Jazz server location is, what the project area is. All of this SCM data RAM automatically captures when assets are published by developers and architects within the rich client, within their IDEs. This allows and provides for full traceability from the artifacts that were used to build and design an application or a service implementation or a service specification, all the way to the builds that actually consume that service later on. In Rational Asset Manager 7.2, we've updated the existing SOA asset library. The new SOA asset library has been updated with new asset types, for example, release, document of understanding, as well as attributes, category schemas. And these have been set up to work very closely with WebSphere Service Registry and Repository. To summarize, we just saw how Rational Asset Manager allows you to more effectively report on your assets, so you can see which assets are being used and not being used, but also see who within the organization are using those assets to notify them in case there's changes to those assets, as well as seeing this activity at the repository level and community level as well. I just want to summarize a couple of other things that were in this release that we think are going to help customers quite a bit. Part of the work we've been doing is around collaborative ALM, collaborative application lifecycle management, and for an asset being able to see how that asset is related to other assets. Since RAM version 7.2 is built with Jazz, we've leveraged some of these Jazz technologies to not only provide the lifecycle capabilities that I've showed you earlier in this demonstration, but also some of the new capabilities that we're building looking forward. And in this release, we're able to federate across multiple Jazz repositories and link to resources so that you can see for a particular asset what are the related Jazz resources. For example, you're able to, at a community level, specify a Jazz repository you want to connect to in a project area, and then specify the type of work item that you would like to relate as an attribute for your particular asset, and a query criteria for what to query into Rational Asset Manager. As people submit assets, you can define these on each individual asset. So for example, as I hover over some of these attributes, RAM will automatically go into Rational Team Concert or these other Jazz-based products and provide the necessary data to allow you to more effectively analyze whether or not an asset is an asset that you'd like to use based on that information. This is one example of how we're making it easier and faster to collaborate on both asset development and asset usage to make teams be able to more effectively deliver their solutions in a faster, more productive way. The final integration I'd like to cover is the BuildForge integration. We've added some new out-of-the-box BuildForge and tasks that allow you to publish, update, or retrieve build binaries using RAM as a definitive software library. And this provides you automated ways to not only build the software, you could even use this to deploy software as well. And so this is some of the new functionality that's in Rational Asset Manager.